Welcome to the Music Nut Program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. And welcome back to the latest edition of It's Chris Whitley Wednesday. On today's show, I will be discussing Chris's seventh album, released on June 5, 2001 on ATO Records, Rocket House. This is a very interesting album from an artist who never rested. When this came out and I first heard it, I was pretty shocked because it didn't sound like anything that had come before. It was the grower in the catalog for me. This is an album that well over 20 years since I purchased it. It has just grown on me. This album is very rich with a lot of textures and layers and a lot of hooks. Very different. Chris's vocals, which can go from a whisper to a scream, are now pretty much down to a whisper more often than not. His voice is huskier here. You heard a lot of that on Perfect Day, but now you're really hearing it on Rocket House. There are a lot of guests on here, and there is a lot going on amidst all the grooves and the hooks. So let's discuss who's on the album. And I'm going to read these straight from the liner notes. We have Chris Whitley on vocals, guitars, synth guitars, banjo, and synth bass. Tony Mangierian on drums, processing, and programming, bass and guitar. And Tony also produced the album. We have Stephen Barber on keyboards, piano, synth bass, percussion, jaw harp, and programming. We have DJ Logic on turntables, electronic abstraction. We have Trixie Whitley, who is Chris's daughter, on vocals on the songs Chain and Serve You. Blondie Chaplin on vocals and vamps on To Joy. Rocket House, Little Torch, Something Shines, and Solid Iron Heart. We have Dave Matthews from the Dave Matthews Band, of course, on acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and vocals on Radar. We have Darren Vigil Gray and Jill Mamade on percussion on the song To Joy. We have Bruce Hornsby on the Wurlitzer piano outro on Radar. We have Chuck Graining on vocals on Rocket House. Badal Roy on tabla on Little Torch. And Mark Henry on programming on Serve You. I mentioned Dave Matthews before. Dave Matthews was a very big fan of Chris's music to the point where I once read an interview where he said he actually appreciated Chris's music more than his own, which is very high praise. So let's go into the tracks on the album. The first track is To Joy, Revolution of the Innocents. Modern psychedelia is how I would describe this, because you have Chris's banjo on here amidst a lot of turntable scratching and instruments coming in and out, a lot of keyboards, and it's very hypnotic in its feel. We have a lot of drum machines on this, trip hop beats. Very interesting opener, but it still takes you in. It's, like I said, it's very hypnotic. It's very different, very surprising when you heard Chris's catalog up to this point. Very interesting opener, and I'm going to say the word interesting quite a bit. Radar is wonderful. When I looked at Wikipedia, maybe I know that's not always the greatest source, it didn't say any singles were released from this album, but when you picked up the album back in the day and you got the sticker on the front, it said features To Joy, Radar, and Say Goodbye. So I'm gathering if they were going to put singles out from this, this would have certainly been one of them, because this is very catchy. It's got a great hook with the pianos coming in and out, and in Chris's chorus in here, particularly the way he approaches this song. Again, we have a lot of turntable scratching, and back in 2001, you heard a lot of turntable scratching in rock music. You heard it a lot in Papa Roach's music. You heard it a lot in Incubus's, but there were more hard rock albums. Let's call it what it is. This album, I you wouldn't really call it rock. It's very abstract. It's almost uncategorizable. It's different. But again, there's a little bit of blues at the core. Radar is wonderful though. It's very catchy, very memorable, has a great bridge on it as well. Very accessible. Chain. Now this is Trixie Whitley's moment because she has the vocal hook in here with the round and round it goes round. That's her contribution. And this goes in and out throughout the song. We have those synth guitars coming in and out. Same thing with those pianos. And again, more turntable scratching and the drums coming in and out. Very trip hop, but again, very accessible and has that great hook from Trixie. The next track is Say Goodbye. I hear this song, I hear hit single. I hear something that would have fit in on a top 40 station or a adult contemporary station. Yes, dare I say that, considering what he had recorded before. But this has a wonderful chorus on here. The pianos on here are very elegant. The guitars are there more for color. For the entire album, Chris's guitars are here more for color. You're not going to hear the really fiery work from his early albums. And those signature guitar lines as well. Excellent track. Very well written, very well sung by Chris as well. One of his more accessible songs, I would say. Solid Iron Heart, that is blues at its scope because it sounds like it's recorded decades earlier, yet you have contemporary sounds in it. Hard to explain. And then with the call and response on the vocals on here, it sounds more blues in scope, but it's not a bluesy guitar song. It just has that kind of feel. It's very different and very interesting. Title song, Rocket House, is led by that hypnotic drum beats and a lot of sounds coming in and out, and along with Chris's banjo line. The keyboards in particular going in and out, it even though it is repetitive, it never bores you, even at 6 minutes long. Very interesting. With with everything that's going on. It's noisy, but not to the point where it's jarring. It still sounds accessible. Serve You. Now, Serve You was originally on Live at Martyrs. This is a much different version. You have Trixie joining Chris again on the vocals here. There's a lot more keyboards on it, but when I talk about the keyboards throughout the album, it's not like they're brought in for texture. It's not the foundation of the song. It's not like new wave music at all. But it's very well done. I would probably say I prefer this version over the version on Live at Martyrs, although I quite like that version as well. And I think a lot of it has to do with Trixie's backing vocals and some of the sounds that are coming in and out. Little Torch was originally Firefighter from Live at Martyrs. This has a lot more going on as well, just as Serve You did. I think it works better and it's more organic and stark version on Live at Martyrs, but it fits in well cohesively with the album. From a Photograph is very stark lyrically, sensual as well. It's a very interesting song. It's a very abstract. It's again a little bit different, not as accessible as a lot of the other tracks on here, but works very well on the album. Vertical Desert, I think, is beautiful, and it is my favorite song on the album. And if I were to do a top 10 songs by Chris Whitley, this would clearly be in there. The pianos are so elegant. Chris's voice on here, I think, is beautiful. It's just very sensual, even much more sensual than From a Photograph is. I just think this is very elegant. I if I start making mix CDs again, I'm gonna throw this song on a lot of them. This is it's a little different. It doesn't have quite the hooks that you'd have on Radar or Say Goodbye, but I just think it is very well written. It's a wonderful song. Something Shines now. This is a very cool closer. You got a lot of different sounds coming in. The pianos are a little more haunting on this. It's very hip hopish, I would definitely say that, although it's not a hip hop song, but it has that kind of feel. I could say trip hop. Song ends at 3:38, and right before 5 minutes kicks in, you hear this bird whistle. And now we get into something that's more kinetic to end the album, more kinetic than anything else that was on the album. We got a steady guitar line going. Now, I looked on Wikipedia, it said this song, which is unwritten, it's unacknowledged on the CD itself. It's called Shadowland. This again has that hypnotic feel, but it takes you back to Den of Ecstasy in its scope, even if it isn't as loud and noisy as that. I mean, there's a lot going on, but the noise isn't provided by loud guitars. You do have a steady guitar line, but Chris isn't using that feedback with aplomb like he did on Den of Ecstasy. It's an interesting way to end the album. To me, I probably wouldn't have put it on. I thought Something Shines, the proper song, ends it perfectly, but it doesn't really take anything away either, does Shadowland. So, this is Chris Whitley's Rocket House, a very interesting album that really gives you it becomes more rewarding with repeated listens. Have you heard this album? And if you have, what do you think of this album? What do you think of this direction that Chris was going into? What are your favorite songs on the album? Do you like Chris's work that's more interesting? Because we're going to go pretty interesting on another album in particular as a similar scope to this, but different. Please let me know in the comments what you think of Rocket House. Please join me next week on It's Chris Whitley Wednesday when I discuss Chris Whitley's eighth album from 2003, Hotel Vast Horizon. And again, we're genre jumping because now we're getting mellower. We're going more in a jazz feel again. And Chris's vocals continue to be very husky and deep, and the songs are wonderful. Just to let you know about some future appearances, I will be back on Slogans Rock and Metal Extravaganza on Saturday, March 1st, 2025, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be joined by Logan and Sydney. as well as Ernesto Ramos, who came up with this topic, along with Rand Kelly. Rand is Prague. We will be talking about building a better box set, which should be very interesting. Just to let you straight out, I'm not into all the fluff on these big $200-300 box sets coming out these days. Just give me some kick-ass music, some unreleased live shows, and tracks that were B-sides, and give me the stories. That's my thing. But I'm sure we're all gonna come at it from a different angle. Rand Kelly really has a lot of passion for what he does. Check out his latest appearance on Grant's Rock Warehouse with our friend Grant Arthur. They did a series on King's X, and they just did their last episode on it. They touched on King's X's last 5 studio albums from 2001 to 2022. They both brought a lot of passion to the show, and King's X is one of my favorite bands, so that was a very interesting watch. So, thank you all so much for joining me today. Until I see you again, do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.